Welcome, everyone, to the ISM Rochester Lunch and Learn webinar series. Our program for today will be the dangers of dirty spend data. We want to make it interactive, so please put your comments and questions in the chat box because Susan would love to hear from you. Our speaker for today is the one and only Susan Walsh. Yay! The classification guru. She has been cleaning, classifying, and fixing dirty data for over a decade and set up the Classification Guru in 2017 to solve dirty data problems in the procurement world. She has now helped over 90 clients from many industries across the globe, as well as being an entrepreneur. Susan is an industry thought leader, influencer, and global speaker. She's been a key influencer for the Accounts Payable Association for the last 2 years, has courses on Pluralsight and O'Reilly, and is the creator of the COAT methodology. I will now turn the program over to Susan.
Thank you very much. I say influencer, but really I think I'm a bad influencer. But what I really would love is some audience participation. I will have some questions and bits and bobs as we go along. So first of all, I'm going to attempt to share, and I'm going to make sure that the sound is on too, because that's going to be really, really important. Right, okay, let's try this and see how it goes. There we go. Hopefully you can all see, and I'm just going to get my screen ready so I can have my chat up and have all my bits and bobs together. So how are we all? Hands up in the chat who has problems with their data of any kind of type or shape. Probably a few. My passion is to really make what is quite a dull and boring subject to a lot of people something that's a bit more interesting and fun. I see the hands, I knew it. So before we start, I'm going to share a little video with you to get you pumped up for talking all things dirty data. This is going to be not only an informative session, but I'm going to use the word fun. I'm going to be bold and say you're going to have some fun too. So let's get started. No, hang on. What's going on here?
When you think of superheroes, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Men in tights? Women with superhuman strength? Capes? Lots of superheroes wear capes, but only one wears a coat. A data coat. By day, she's Susan Walsh, but when dirty data rears its ugly head, she becomes the Classification Guru. What are the Classification Guru's superpowers? Consistency, organization, accuracy, and trust. With help from her good friend and trusty sidekick, the Data Whisperer.
Hi, Scott.
The Classification Guru wages war against dirty data, fighting her sworn enemies, misclassification, duplicate, and the typonator. It's the Classification Guru's job to clean up the mean streets of Excel City.
That was bang out of order.
So, when you're in Excel hell, don't let dirty data get you down. Call the Classification Guru.
Okay, let's get started. So what are we going to cover today? Well, I think first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, how I ended up in this weird and wonderful world of data. Then we're going to talk about what is dirty data, because you might all have different perceptions of what that is depending on what you're working with. And then we're going to talk about the consequences of dirty data. What's the impact on business? And how can we help enable data accuracy? It's never going to be 100%, but how can we get it the best it could possibly be? Then I'm going to give you some tips on how you can maintain and spot check your data in something as simple as a pivot table, so it doesn't have to be too complex. I'm going to talk a little bit and touch on other tools that might be available. I'm going to share with you my dirty data maturity model in case you need to sell this into the business or the organization a bit more. And then finally, we're going to summarize everything that we've gone over. So it is a jam-packed session. So let's start with a little bit about myself. Glad you liked the video, Dave. Thank you. So how did I get here? Well, first of all, guess what? Like you probably fell into procurement, I fell into the procurement data space. It was a bit of a weird ride, actually. I graduated in 2001 with a different hairstyle and a degree in commerce. After working in sales and FMCG and corporates for pretty much all my 20s, I decided I didn't want to do that. But part of the journey was I actually ended up selling bras on QVC. So that was my 15 minutes of fame. But I did realize that wasn't really what I wanted to do. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I decided to open this beautiful clothes shop in Guildford. Lovely clothes, really pretty. I designed I picked all the interiors, I did it all. And guess what? Nobody came in. Nobody bought anything. And so after about 7 months, I just could not afford to keep going. In fact, I was so broke that I couldn't even afford to go bankrupt. I had to save up for 6 months to go bankrupt. It was a bit crazy. So I needed a job, and I needed a job fast. And I found an ad online, and it was for a spend analytics company called Spend 360. And that is really where I found my love for data. I found that I was really, really enjoyed it. I was quick at it. It's good. It didn't even feel like work to me. And I really, really loved that. And I spent a good 5 years there before we were bought by Coupa. And then I decided that it was time to move on. And so I've done a lot since then as well. So first of all, you may know I have a book called Between the Spreadsheets, Classifying and Fixing Dirty Data. That book tells you how to normalize your suppliers, build taxonomies, and classify your data in Excel. And watch out, later this year, there will be a second edition. I am finalizing the chapters right now. As well as that, when I set up the business in 2017, since then I have worked across all industries, languages, countries. I've classified and normalized data. I now have a team. We've built customized taxonomies. We've cleaned vendor master data, P2P systems, ERPs, CRMs, material master, anything that's messy that you can think of, we have probably cleaned it. I'm also proud to say I've won a few awards and accolades along the way, so that's been really great. And then, as you heard, I've also got a couple of courses online too on the basics of cleaning name and address data. So, I've been kind of busy, but I'm never busy enough. And then earlier, towards the end of last year, I also launched a tool called Samification, which is an on-demand supplier normalization tool. So you just drop your suppliers into the website, into the file into the box, and within 3 minutes, your suppliers will be normalized, just like that. And how it works is we have a master list, and then anything that matches the master list gets normalized by that. Anything else goes through a set of rules. And if that's not good enough, after you've done that, we will take that data and we will improve it even more so you can come back and get it updated again, even cleaner. So hopefully that is going to save a lot of organizations a lot of time, especially when resources are super tight right now. But that's enough about me. Let's get on to the good stuff. Let's talk about what is dirty data. So first of all, I would love if you could just put in the chat some ideas about what you think dirty data is, or what it might be, or what it is to you. So I'll just wait and see what we get. Oh, duplicated data. Yep, that's a good one. I bet everybody can relate to that one. Outdated data. Yep, that's good. Misclassified. Yeah. Duplicate. Yeah. Data that isn't current, like inventory. That's a really good. Yeah, these are all great. And also, as you can see, whole range of different issues as well. And some that you might not have considered. The first one, and this is probably one of the most common ones I see, is typos. So supplier names are misspelled, invoice descriptions are misspelled, GL codes misspelled, classification can even be misspelled. I think there was one taxonomy where management consulting was spelled 3 different ways in the same taxonomy. It was crazy. So always something to keep an eye out for. Then, of course, there's things like wrong descriptions. So talking about inventory again, if you've set up a part or a product and it's got the wrong description, that's going to cause a lot of issues. You're going to then maybe have 2 or 3 versions of the same thing under different codes, descriptions. That's going to mess up your inventory levels, your warehouse space, and even possibly your cash flow. Then there's incorrect information too. So what about the dimensions of the products that you have to set up? I've heard stories of someone setting up a TV as 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre instead of a metre by metre. Now, if you're doing some load planning, that's a problem. In reality, there should be checks in place to actually stop that from happening, but the reality is it happens. As well as that, one of my favorites, information in the wrong columns. And I see this so often in address data. How often do you see the state in the city column or vice versa, or the whole address squeezed into one little cell? It is no good. You have to have that all clean and orderly, because otherwise, again, it creates multiple versions of the same thing. And then a good one, especially working, thanks, Jessica, looking at standard units of measure, because quite often now we're in global businesses. So you are not just looking at your own local data, you're looking at global data. And are we talking inches or centimeters, miles, kilometers? All those different things really make a difference, because again, you end up with multiple versions of the same thing, or you can't find what you're looking for. You can't report on everything properly because you don't have all the information. You might not even know that another version of that product exists. And then currency issues is always a good one. If it's not clear that there are multiple currencies in your data set, you could report on the wrong numbers and financial values, which we've seen happen. There's usually flags. So for example, in one file we worked on, we had like $500 taxis, and there's about 50 of them in Sweden. And, you know, just from the work we do, you don't generally see more than like $50 to $100 in taxis. So maybe one would be okay, but to have so many, that was a red flag to us that something wasn't right. And the conversion had been done incorrectly, and that's why it was a bit of a mess. And then there's formatting issues as well. So it could be that the dates are different. You've got European date formats, you've got US date formats. In fact, even within that, there's a lot of different date formats. So right now, I'd love you to just type in the chat box how you format your dates, because it's going to be interesting. And I'm looking forward to seeing this. Because what I'm expecting to see is, yeah, we've got dashes, we've got slashes as separators. You could have dots as separators. Some people do day, month, year. Someone's doing day, month, 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 year. And, you know, even within one organization, there's normally multiple different date formats. So it's a really good idea to just standardize it. You know, do you want separators or not? You know, do you want 2 numbers for the month, or do you want the month spelled out? All those things are really important. And actually even year first for some people. So it's very different. And, you know, if you start a new job and don't know that everyone's formatting dates a different way, it could cause problems with documents, finding information, matching things, all those things. But ultimately, all of these things that I've just shared with you all add up to our good old friends, the duplicates, which pretty much show up in every single data set I have ever worked with. And basically, it could be near duplicates as well. So you might have a Bob Smith and a Robert Smith. You know, like the products that we talked about, the name could be slightly differently, or if it's an address, it could be like Classification Guru Street versus Classification Guru ST. Again, it creates multiple versions. So it's really good to be aware of these things and keep an eye out for them. But I wouldn't just leave you hanging like that. I will share with you further on into this presentation some tips on how we can get everybody on the same page. And it wouldn't be fair to just talk about it. I've got to show you some real life examples too, because, you know, we all like to kind of slow down and look at the accident that's happened, don't we? So here's the first thing. Here is LinkedIn, that well-known networking, advertising, training, recruitment platform. What it's not is a restaurant, but somebody who came to work for me classified it as that. And I know exactly why, because they looked at the description, which said restaurant. They didn't look at the supplier name too. And when you're classifying spend data, one of the most important things is to understand context and not just look at one single column. You have to look at the supplier name and an invoice or PO description. And if you really have to, a GL, but they can be pretty unreliable as well. Another thing that you should do is never assume that you know what a company is without using the context of the data. And this is a great example. This is Tinder Corporation, and it's for a charity I was doing some work for in the UK. And this came up, and I thought, there's no way they would be associated with Tinder, not even for advertising. And then the description said data cabling. So it was really hard to find because, you know, the other Tinder is so well known and dominates Google search. But eventually I did find that there is an IT services company in the UK called Tinder Corporation Limited who does lots of IT services. So just shows you, you might be pretty sure you think you know what something is, and you still could be wrong. So again, using the context and the information of the data around you will really help keep you on track with that. And then there's those messy addresses we talked about. Look here, we've got St. Paul and St. Paul, you know, so set those rules up. But then also we've got centre, and centre's abbreviated too. So have those standard rules and processes in place to stop this happening. And actually, this was all one supplier, but there were so many different versions. They had multiple payment terms too, which I'll show you right now. You know, and this is so common. You would not believe, it's probably most organizations have multiple payment terms against the same company. So really important to have that standardization. And then what else have we got? Well, here's another project. We helped clean up supplier data for a Coupa implementation. And what they needed was to define a golden record. So one unique record with all the information. So as you can see, they had a number of different versions of the same supplier. We went through, found what would be the correct record to use as the golden record and flagged it. We then also tidied up all the addresses. You can see if you look in the name 5 column, it says United Kingdom and UK. So there's a lot of inconsistency and you know, non-standardization. We see like US, USA as well. You know, North Carolina or NC, all these different things can cause so many problems. And then also in the country column, we've got some states as well. So it's just really messy. So on the right, you can see it's beautifully cleaned and standardized, and then it becomes really clear that it really truly is just one record. And then we were able to classify that information once it was all cleaned up. But it's not just procurement data, it's not just address data, it's all kinds of data. And we did a project looking at sourcing industrial estates in Europe. Don't ask me why, it was just something that came up. And when we got the latitude and longitude, this is what we found. The middle of the ocean, nowhere near anywhere we were supposed to be. When I looked at the context of the other data in the data set, realized pretty quickly that actually the latitude and longitude were the wrong way around. And so guess what? Oh, look, we found it. There it is, exactly where it's supposed to be. So really important, you know, that it comes in all different shapes and forms. It's not just one type of data. There are issues with all different kinds of data. So how can we prevent this? Well, first of all, let's again not assume that we think we know exactly what something is. Just sense check, use that context. Use the information around you to sense check that it looks right. And then think about, would my company use this product or service? Is this something they would buy? So back to the Tinder example, there was no way that my client would be, you know, purchasing anything from them. So it was clear that it was something else. Values are a great guide to tell you if something's going wrong, and it could be, you know, like the latitude and longitude. It could be like the taxi example where the cost per taxi was unusually high, but it could be something like every month you order 50 units of something and 1 month it's 500. Now, is that because somebody's accidentally put an extra zero in, or is there a promotion running and that's why you need, and it might just be worth doing a bit of investigation to find out, because, you know, to save 500 of something turning up at somewhere that isn't necessary. So really just, it's about preventing these things before they happen. And check things on Google. Google is a legitimate skill. So go and have a look, sense check it. Just remember that wherever you're based, Google will bring back the closest results. So, when I'm looking for a lot of American companies, I normally have to go on google.com, or it kind of forces me back to Google UK. So what I do is I'll type the company name with USA at the end, or put in Inc. or something like that to try and help field the search results in the right direction. But use it to the max. It is very worthwhile and could save you a lot of hassle in future. And then actually go, when you are on the website, check that the information on that website matches what's in your data, because we see quite often that you can have a company name, but it could be there's different companies with the same name in different countries. And so again, it's, is this the right company? Is this the information? So have a look at all that. Use the information that you have to hand. So why should we bother about it? Well, it's going to save time fixing dirty data, and we are already stretched. Resources are short. You need as much time as you can. So it's going to help you gain back some of that time. And if you do find mistakes, it can be really costly to rectify. You can find that it's going to affect your decision-making processes positively or negatively, depending on what you're looking at. It's going to impact things like fraud and risk management. If you don't have accurate data, you could be letting fraud slip through the net. You could be doing searches on suppliers without the right information, and they could be coming back as okay, but actually in reality they're not, and could cause a lot of problems. Again, for regulatory reporting, etc., you need that right information. GDPR, privacy issues as well, have that data, keep it accurate, don't just keep it safe. Because guess what, if it does go wrong, we don't often think about this, but what about the reputational damage that could cause to our organization, which could impact things like our bonus for the year, our pay rise, even our actual role. If your reputation is so severely damaged that it affects sales in the organization, it can have a really far and wide-reaching impact. And of course, dirty data makes your lives more difficult, and who wants that? Certainly not me. But let's talk about something a little more positive, because when we go and try to get sign off to get some budget to clean our data, for some reason, like cost savings and time efficiencies doesn't seem to be enough. So let's go to the business and say, how would you like to increase profitability, improve the bottom line, improve operational efficiencies? Talk to the business in their language to pique their interest and get them on board with helping clean and maintain that data as well. Then there's the consequences of that dirty data too. What actually happens on the other side? Well, first of all, within your reporting and decision making, you've got things like cost savings it could impact. It could impact those negotiations that you have with your supplier. You might be sitting with one set of information and they could have something very different, and then your negotiation doesn't quite go to plan. It can even help with supplier rationalization if you normalize your suppliers. Think of all those PwCs and PricewaterhouseCoopers. By normalizing them all, which you can now do in 3 minutes with samification, wink, how many suppliers are you actually going to truly have versus what you have in your system? I mean, we've seen up to 50 different versions of PwC in global data sets when it's truly just one. When you are doing reporting and analytics, that makes a huge difference to the numbers. And even on things like forecasting too, we talked about, the extra zeros going in. It can really have an impact on what you order, what you buy, if the forecasting team haven't got that right. And then even it's going to impact things like your budgets for the year, pay rises, bonuses, all that kind of stuff. And wider than that, when it's CRMs, it could impact, are you targeting the right customers for your business? Do you have the right information? Or are you mailing out wasted posts to people who don't live at those addresses anymore, or who are not interested in your services? So there's so many different ways it can have an impact. And then finally, shipping the correct products. Quite often we see items and systems with multiple versions of the same product with a slightly different description and some different codes. And you could end up shipping the wrong product to the customer, and that's going to cost you to bring that back, change it over, and ship it back out. So it's going to have lots of impacts. And if we look back at the normalization again, here are some of the kind of usual suspects of suppliers that we see multiple versions of in data sets. So if you look here, we've got some values and we've got a list of all the suppliers. But when we normalize them, guess what? That picture changes a lot. That tells you a whole different story. And what decisions are you going to make on this information versus the previous screen? So it's really impactful and can really help you make the best decisions and be better at your job. And you know, doing this, it's probably hopefully going to save you, like I said, lots of time as well. And then there's analytics. So this is a real life example. I had a client and they had existing categorized information. So we had everything from marketing to estates to finance to HR to legal to management consultancy to property in there. When we went through and reclassified their data with a new taxonomy, guess what? All of that information above there was all legal services. And basically, it was like 40% higher spend than they thought. And we're talking millions of pounds here. That's a huge, huge difference. And that wasn't the only category that happened in. So could that be happening in your organization too? Very easily, particularly if you're only focusing on your high top suppliers, for example, you know, the 80-20 rule. There's a lot hiding in that bottom tail spend that could be causing you lots of trouble and you have no idea. So having it classified can really bring some visibility. And then what about the impact of dirty data on technology implementation? I need to put my teeth in today. I don't know what's wrong with them. Technology implementation. It's prevalent more than ever. We're all hearing about all these new Gen AI tools and how they're going to be amazing, and just, you know, everyone's worried that they're going to take our jobs and do everything for us. But actually, guess what? Data needs to be cleaned before anything happens, and it's often neglected, especially with implementations of new software products. You know, people buy them thinking that, oh, it's going to fix all our problems and clean our data for us. Unfortunately, it's not. You've generally find that the data's still not right post-implementation, and then what happens is people lose faith in the data, they become disengaged, they say it doesn't work, and they go back to their Excel spreadsheets. And then you could try and fix it at that point, but it's going to cost a lot more money than if you had just cleaned your data up front. And you have to then hope that staff will re-engage and adopt that new technology again if it is fixed. Otherwise, projects are abandoned. And I've heard horror stories of tens of millions of dollars of projects being thrown out the window because they just didn't take the time to clean their data before starting the project. And then, of course, AI, machine learning, Gen AI automation. Guess what? Data still needs to be cleaned and prepared beforehand. AI learns from training data sets. You can't just put messy training data sets in the AI and expect it to fix it. It has to learn from clean data first. So same with machine learning, you know, it's based on rules and coding. If it's learning from the wrong information, it's going to come out wrong. It really is true what they say about garbage in and garbage out. And how many of you have been that little guy on the right? I know I have. But the big question really is AI going to take over my job? Am I going to still have a procurement role at the end of this? Well, my answer to that is absolutely not. You will be safe because as long as it can't tell the difference between a dog or a mop, an apple or an owl, or a dog or a bagel, I think it's pretty safe to say we're all safe. I am certainly not concerned about the future of the role of our business. In fact, if anything, I would say that having people who can clean data manually and understand it and know it is going to be an even more valuable skill than ever. So by all means, use AI to leverage and help you where you can. For example, I'm doing the new chapters of my book, and at the end of it, I'm going to have to do indexing for the book, and I absolutely hate that. And I did a terrible job the first time round. So ChatGPT is going to help me index my book this time round, and I'm not going to have to do the work. That's working smarter. It's not taking away the classification, because honestly, that is terrible. It's pretty shocking, the results, which will be in one of the chapters of my new book. So you'll have to wait to see that. But yeah, I would not be worried about that. Just leverage it to make your job easier. That's my advice. So how do we enable data accuracy? Well, first of all, it's going to be that horrible, horrible word, data governance. It's so scary, and kind of, it's like, oh, it's always someone else's job to do this kind of stuff. But I wanted to come up with something that everybody could get on board with and everybody could understand. So this is my visualization of data governance explained. It's basically, data governance helps you color within the lines. It makes sure that you're doing everything you're supposed to be. And I came up with the COPE methodology, which we'll go into. But it's just a really simple way to explain to non-data people or people who are not used to having to work with rules and things like that, why it's important. So that's that. What else can we do? Well, first of all, I think we have to realize that there is no magic quick fix button or software or magic wand in the world that is going to fix all our problems. You may need different tools to fix different problems. There's not going to be one thing that does everything. New data really needs to be reviewed by a person, preferably someone who knows the area inside out, so a subject matter expert. And we need to get the whole organization involved, not just procurement, not just IT or data, not just finance, but everybody. It's all of our responsibilities to have clean data. And agree those common standards, terms, processes that we're all going to work to, and document them so that there's a reference for everybody. And not just that, you can't clean it and then just leave it. You have to maintain and refresh that data too. So you have to keep going. And then spot check it regularly, because yes, you might have classified it and it was right last month or last quarter, but maybe someone came along and changed their mind about what they thought it should be classified as, or somebody might have accidentally cut and pasted something over what was there. So it's really important to go back and check that it still is as it should be. So how can we get people to do that and get on board with it? Well, let's talk about the data coat a little bit more. I like to say, make sure your data has its coat on. And this is going to be a framework to help minimize these errors. It's going to help with data governance. It's going to engage data and non-data professionals, because data problems are ultimately people problems. And it's memorable and fun, and that's what we need to get all of procurement on board and the rest of the organization. So, what is the data code? Well, first of all, data has to be consistent. So get everybody using the same terminology, those same units of measure, doing the processing, inputting the data the same way, using the same language. And again, document it, have them working to, have a set of rules. So when my team are classifying on new projects, we'll have a shared document where we'll put in, if this specific word comes up in the description, we're going to classify it as this. This supplier, we're going to classify it as this. And then we work to those rules, because there's multiple people working on the file, so we want to make sure it's consistent. Then it needs to be organized. So categorize your data so that it's super easy to find, whether that's by spend category or by region or by business unit, whatever it is, have it there so that someone asks you off the cuff, oh, what did we spend with nuts and bolts in Europe last year? You can go, oh, press this button, off we go. All done. Saving you time. That's what it's all about. And then, of course, your data has to be accurate, but define what that is within each of your departments. So, it could be classification rules. If you're in finance, it could be that the numbers have to be 100% spot on. If you're in sales and marketing, it could be that you need certain data points like customer name, address, and email. And of course, once it's consistent, it's organized, and it's accurate, it becomes trustworthy. And that is what we want. We hear so often, we don't trust the data's not right. By applying the data quote, you will get these things and it will make it as accurate as it can be. But if you need a little reminder, here's a little something for you.
Are you leaving your data out in the cold? You wouldn't go out into sub-zero temperatures without the correct protection, so why do so many companies forget to protect their data? Unprotected data can lead to bad business decisions that cost money and put jobs at risk. That's why your data needs its coat on. This means making sure your data is consistent, organized, accurate, and trustworthy. Consistent means using the same standards, terms, and classifications company-wide. Organized data makes it easier to find. Think of it like a messy closet. It can be difficult to find what you're after, even when you know it's in there. When organized correctly, it becomes easier to find what we want. Data should be accurate, which can mean different things to different people, but at its most basic level, accurate data is correct. And finally, data should be trustworthy. This is critical. If your team can't trust the data, they might not use it. And business decisions around jobs, staffing, and budgets are all based on data, so it's got to be right. If you'd like to speak to an expert about data in your own business, visit theclassificationguru.com to find out more.
And if you want to share that with your colleagues, that video is on the Classification Guru YouTube channel, so feel free to share it far and wide. I'm just going to leave you with a little analogy, which I love. So data is like a classic car. It's only valuable and usable if you look after it. If you don't, it's going to rust and decay and be worthless. So let's talk about some practical tips now. How can you actually go and spot check your data to know if it's right or wrong? Going to show you in Excel. By no means the easiest option, but we all have it and we all use it daily, even if we don't admit to it. First of all, I have put normalized supplier and then the category levels in the rows box. I've then changed it to a tabular form so that you have the suppliers down one side and then your categories along the right. I've taken off the subtotals as well. And then what I get is a nice list, and then I can start to see my supplier names and the categories against them. And you can start to look out for things that don't look right, that stand out. We've got Dell as a courier here. I know exactly why that's happened because one of the invoice lines probably said delivery. But again, thinking back to what are we buying from the supplier? We're not buying courier services from Dell, we're buying IT. So I would always classify that as hardware. Decide again within your organization how you want to do that. Some companies do like to split out delivery charges and taxes, etc. So agree that within your organization, put that data quote on. But it's a really great quick way of just having a look and seeing if everything looks right. And again, you can do it the other way around as well. So you could drag that level 1 box up to the top and then have your level 1s and all the suppliers that are associated with a level 1. So you might have an HR category, for example, and you might find Dell in there. You shouldn't really find Dell under HR. It should really be in IT most of the time, I would say. So a really great quick sense check and way to see what's going on with your data. And a really quick way to show your organization, look, we've got this amount of spend misclassified in the wrong place. We don't have the right visibility here. So hopefully that's powerful enough to show them that something needs to be done. And then, of course, if you are working in the pivot table and you go and change your data within the tab, make sure you do the refresh all button when you're working, just so that when you're scrolling through, you're not looking at stuff you've already fixed, because hands up, I have done that. And then it's very frustrating realizing you've already fixed something. So that's my top tips. The other thing that I would say is also look for patterns and trends within your data. So as I showed you with the latitude and longitude, it became pretty clear pretty quickly that they'd been switched around because of everything around it. So look for those patterns and trends, and that will help guide you. In MRO data, it's the same. So here we've done a list of product codes or part numbers and the descriptions. Now, again, in a in a system, you should have one part number, one code, and one description. As you can see, there's multiple descriptions against all of these, but the most concerning is this bottom one, where we have 5 different items, 2 very different products, and sizes, etc., all under the same code. I don't even know how they were able to order the right thing under this code, to be honest. But really important to just do spot checks on those things, because it might not be obvious, you might not realize. So obviously we know Excel is not always the best, especially if you're working with large amounts of data. So what else can we use? Well, there's a number of different tools out there, and it would depend on your organization and what subscriptions they've got. You've got Power BI, Tableau, Click. There's also Alteryx, and we use a tool called Omniscope here at TCG. It really is, there is no one better tool than another. It really is personal preference and also what is happening within your organization. Make it work for you. But you know, those pivot tables you can easily do in any other visualization tool, and it'll flag up the things that you need to have a look at and spot. But of course, I know how hard it is to get buy-in from senior leadership or the rest of the business when it comes to anything related to spend data cleaning, etc. It's really hard work. So I came up with something a little bit fun to counteract those boring consultancy maturity models, that are a bit like boxy and just a bit, don't really actually tell you much. So I have come up with the dirty data maturity model, which is a step-by-step visual example of why your organization needs to clean its data. So the first rung of the ladder is you're at the dirty data stage. You literally have no visibility. You are working in Excel. You've probably got multiple systems. You cannot even see or you join your data up together because it's so messy and inconsistent. This is what I call the equivalent of wearing your underwear inside out for another day. You know you shouldn't do it, and you're probably going to get away with it. However, knowing your luck, that's going to be the day you get caught out. You end up in an accident, go to hospital. And playing or leaving dirty data as it is exactly that. You are just waiting for that accident to happen. It's going to happen at some point and you're going to get found out. And unfortunately, that tends to be when the budget magically appears to actually fix the problems. I'm trying to really emphasize the proactive rather than reactive approach to the data issues. Maybe it's a bit better than dirty data. Maybe you do have some systems in place. Maybe you're working in something more than Excel, and maybe you do have some standards, but it's still not quite there. So we're up to the D-class data stage. But we want to be better than that. We want to start having like rules and protocols in place. We want some tools. We want to pull that data together into one flat uniform file. So it would be distributed data at this point, and you might actually even have somebody helping you work on that as well. But some of it's ironed, some of it's not, some of it's neat, some of it's not. We need to get it in a better state than that. We want to put it in the wardrobe. But at this point, it's disordered still. You might not have, any kind of set regular maintenance. You might be ad hoc classifying your data or looking at your spend. You might not have any dashboards set up, or you might, but they're not up to date. They're not really maintained, and you need to do something. So what we really are aiming for, and the pinnacle, is dirt-free data, which actually doesn't exist. But, at that point, you have organized data, you have people looking at it and maintaining it, you have set rules in place when it comes to classification, setting up new suppliers, payment terms, addresses, all that kind of stuff. And this is actually the hardest level to be at, because to keep it clean is really hard. Like, accidents happen, people happen. And so again, having that data quote on really helps to minimize those errors and help you have a nice wardrobe full of clean, accurate, organized data with amazing insights and sexy, clean dashboards. And you might even at this point have some automation involved to help your life, make your life a little bit easier. So that's our whistle-stop tour of the dangers of dirty spend data. I hope that some of that has resonated with you and has given you some inspiration to go forth and clean. What have we covered off? Well, accurate data is critical. It really is. I can't emphasize that enough. And there are no shortcuts to getting to it. You have to put the work in, and you have to know and maintain your data. The more you look at your data, the easier it is to spot when things aren't right. I can promise you that. And agree those common standards, terms, processes, get everybody working the same way, and get everybody involved. Talk to finance. I know, I'm sorry, but talk to finance, talk to forecasting, talk to production, get the insights to help you keep your data as clean as possible. And don't forget to put that data quote on. It's so, so important. Make sure it's consistent, it's organized, it's accurate, and it's trustworthy. And before we go to the questions, I am just going to leave you with one little last video, because cleaning data is super important, but it should also be fun. Hi, I'm Susan Walsh, and companies across the globe are at it. They're replacing their third-party spend classification tools with the Classification Guru, a specialist in spend data classification, taxonomy customization, and data cleansing. Dirty data, nasty typos, stubborn duplicates. The Classification Guru does it all. Don't waste your time on multiple data cleaning products. You only need one. The Classification Guru. Bam, and the data is clean. And here is my LinkedIn QR code if you would like to connect, along with my details. If you've got any questions that you don't want to ask in the chat, feel free to email me if you want to bounce some ideas off in terms of your own data. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and see if we've got any questions from anyone.
Please put your questions in the chat, or if you would like to ask your question live, let us know.
Yeah.
What's the matter?
I clicked the wrong button. It's
fine. Oh, she clicked the wrong.
Good, it's fine.
Anybody have any questions for Susan? Because now's the time. Does anybody have problems in their that you're going through now?
Don't worry, this is a safe space. We won't tell anyone. And actually, you'll probably find that most people have very similar problems.
Yeah. I mean, I've just been noticing that a lot with the predictive orchestration, they have been talking a lot more about the dirty data.
I really thought when I set this business up in 2017 that it would have a bit of a shelf life because of technology. And like you said, more than ever, it's so important to have clean data. And I'm even seeing that being discussed more on LinkedIn. It's coming to the forefront at last. I mean, we've only been having this problem for like 20 years, but finally it might actually be taken a bit more seriously.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, hands up who it feels like they're being held up because they don't have the right data or the accurate enough data, or they have to fix it first before they can do something with it.
Oh.
Ooh, I can see hands. Yeah.
Mike, go ahead. You're live.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, I'll go into a brief story here. When I first started with my organization over 5 years ago, they really didn't have a procurement department. And I was brought on by somebody that was also let go from a previous company that we worked at together. He knew what I could do as it relates to procurement and operations. So the first task I was given when I came into the organization was to troll through over $110 million in unclassified spend. And the only way to do it, because they don't, and still to this day really don't still have a great system to do it, is I had to pull up every one of those $110 million, each individual invoice one by one, look at it, what it was for, make a judgment, and then I classified it from beginning to end. So we're talking probably
Imagine how long that took you.
3 months, 3 months, 15,000 invoices. It was incredible.
That's actually really impressive that you managed that in that space of time, because you probably had a million other things you were doing at the same time as well.
Actually, the way they structured it was that was my only job until I got that project done. So
Oh,
it
wow.
was
Okay, well that makes more sense then. But yeah, that is really intense. Your head must have really hurt by the end of that.
incredibly boring, incredibly boring. So
So, do you still have to do that now?
no, no, thank God. We have a full procurement department. We have analysts. Still
I
do a lot of
love
work.
that.
Yeah, we still
Honestly,
go ahead.
procurement analysts was not a thing like 10 years ago,
Exactly.
even 8 years ago. It just wasn't a thing. So I get really excited when I hear that now.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
But yeah, imagine how much that cost the business. How valuable is your time?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
that was a quarter of my salary. So I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, and they probably could have outsourced it for
a
less.
tenth of that. Yep.
Yeah. I hear it all the time. It's
Yep.
not uncommon. But great surname.
Oh yes, you too. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Does
You're welcome.
anybody else have any comments or questions you want to ask Susan? She's here now, so please ask your question. If you want to, raise your
Anything
hand.
you want. Like, doesn't even need to be procurement related. You can ask whatever you want. Oh my goodness. So Kara's saying she had a similar experience to Mike. I've heard this a few times, and sometimes there's no maintenance, and so you end up back where you started within a year or two, and it can be really frustrating.
Well, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Or
Okay, here we go. We've got one from
you
Jessica.
got
How to motivate stakeholders to change? We face a lot of resistance to systematic changes. It really is yeah. There's hopefully you can't hear that. There's a lot of beeping going on out there. Hopefully, there's not one universal answer to that, and you really have to find out what the motivations of your stakeholders are within your organization. So if the motivation for them is to grow the business by X% in the next year, show them the messy data and tell them how you could get there faster if they had cleaner data. And say if we spend, and honestly, like, I can't imagine that it should cost more than $100,000 to classify any data set. And I've classified millions and millions of rows. It can cost anything from $5,000 and it shouldn't be more than 100K. And what you'll get back from that is millions of dollars of insights and savings that could potentially be made. So there's your ROI. It's very hard to prove until it's actually happened. Again, you can show them a sample of, like, here's the messy data and here's what it should look like. So when we do any classification project, we always add in new columns with the clean data. So you'll have your supplier name before, then you'll have your normalized name, you'll maybe have your old classification and then the new classification, because visually showing them can be more powerful. And if there's numbers attached to that, then financial numbers, that's normally a motivator as well. If it's compliance or something like that, then you might get a chance of more. But really, I've been using the terms, improving or increasing profitability, improving the bottom line, operational efficiencies, all that business terminology that they like to hear. But yeah, find out what their motivations are and find a way to tie the clean data into that. That example of legal services being like 40% higher than they thought. Can you imagine like how many legal companies did they have as suppliers in the first place? That's a question. They could probably rationalize that. They could probably negotiate better rates with a fewer number of those lawyers. And also, there's probably a huge variance of cost amongst all those different companies too. So you can start to look at all that, but not without having the classification and all that first.
Thank you so much, Susan. And thank you for your question, everybody. I have to say, we're out of time.
Just
We
very
had,
quickly, sorry, Cara, as
sure.
well. So track your time and tell them how much you're spending on whatever it is you're doing and put a value to that. And say we could outsource that and have it done in half the time for less cost. And that might motivate them as well.
Thank you very much. Oh, one more. Great advice. Thanks, Susan.
Good luck, everyone. And if not, call me.
Well, be sure to connect with Susan on LinkedIn. Believe me, she's she's always on LinkedIn, so she will definitely get back to you quickly on LinkedIn. And thank you so much, Susan, for a great presentation as always. And
Thank you
thank
so
you
much for
to
your
our
time.
audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We'll have to bring you back again. Thank you so much.
I would love
Well,
that.
everybody have a great day, and we'll get this recording posted on the YouTube page and get the link out to everybody. Thanks again, everybody.
Have a good day.